talking about, well, in general, here's kind of a scoop with ePortfolios. Now that we're kind of working on this, in the trenches, so to speak,
Right.
What I'd like to find out particularly from you is some of the things that you encountered in working to kind of bring ePortfolios to scale. That is, kind of demonstrating the value of ePortfolio pedagogy. And then, of course, there's the whole logistical issue. But I'm curious how you really pulled in faculty who might not be in disciplines that are very familiar to or amenable to ePortfolios. I mean, English, for example, is kind of okay, that's a fairly easy sell because they've been doing portfolios of some sort forever. Communication studies, actually, I used to know many of the faculty in that department. They're usually, hey, sure, we'll try it. But,
Right.
You've also got the, shall I call it, the more curmudgeonly disciplines.
Correct.
And so I'm curious kind of how you develop a momentum with that.
Okay. So I think one of the things that you guys are on the right track is you're exploring it, right? So I imagine you're thinking of, piloting it in some places, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. And so your primary purpose would be what?
Well, and in fact, one of the things I'm going to do after this call is share with you some of the materials related to our particular grant.
Okay.
But there are 4 different recipients of the grant. Each of them has a slightly different orientation to the project so that we can explore multiple angles. But what we're taking a look at is first the pedagogical viability of ePortfolios for qualitative assessment purposes, particularly to what extent we can actually incorporate those in courses to give us actionable assessment results that really highlight the process of student learning, something that you really can't get just from a standardized quantitative test.
Right.
So that there's that pedagogical angle, and then there is sort of the practical angle, and that is looking at issues of which platforms are able to do which things better than others, what kinds of workload issues are involved in dealing with ePortfolios as opposed to just teaching business as usual. So those are the 2 focus areas, really.
Okay. So we jumped in with full speed and said, okay, in 2006, we put it in the undergraduate announcements and said every single undergraduate at Clemson would have an ePortfolio that contains evidence of the 22, at that point, general education competencies. So that was the implementation. In terms of exploring it, kind of similar to what you're doing, our provost, who is then Dory Helms, pulled together a group of faculty, staff, and students to identify, because we had recently revised Gen Ed, so we have all these competencies, and we still know that SACs are, and your accreditors want to see student learning outcomes, right? They're
Right.
moving away from course and grades and even standardized tests. Those are important, elements, but they're one part of the whole triangle of data. So we know that SACs wanted to see actual evidence, so that was the charge of this task force. Okay, if SACs wants to see evidence, how do we get them the evidence? That group decided an ePortfolio. We simultaneously had an undergraduate laptop, so it just seemed like this kind of perfect storm of new program, changing in accreditation or changes in accreditation, and laptop requirement. Let's do a portfolio.
Quick question for you.
Yeah.
Was this incorporated as part of your QEP initiative for SACs?
This was pre-QEP.
Okay.
This is 2006. We hadn't, had any kind of conversations about QEP at all.
Okay.
So if we skip ahead to 2011, when we started to think about our QEP, we looked at the data from ePortfolio. The data from ePortfolio, as well as the data from the EETF test, suggested that our students, while they come to Clemson, with high critical thinking scores, it pretty much remains flat. So based on that data from, again, the evidence in the ePortfolio and test scores, that the QEP should be a sophomore critical thinking experience. So we've used ePortfolio data to do the QEP. Now, ePortfolio is alive and well in our QEP because we have the sophomore experience. They're generating critical thinking artifacts, which will then be put in an ePortfolio for further assessment of critical thinking. So now we can get this kind of nice longitudinal data
Right.
of critical thinking at the sophomore level and at the senior level.
Okay. The timing of that, boy, you talk about a perfect storm because you said 2011, and of course, some of your findings are right there with Academically Adrift, which comes out in 2011.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we, in 2006, put it in the undergraduate announcement, so we rolled it out by class, right? So freshmen that came in 2006 were required to have an ePortfolio for graduation.
Wow.
Faculty that are teaching gen ed courses were required to identify the competencies on their syllabus and on their syllabi, and identify, and they didn't all do this, and they didn't even all put it on their syllabi, but, identify an assignment that would satisfy the competency. So we've got these groups of students, we've got, this very, very, very minor requirement for faculty. If you can kind of put the dots together, you can see that most of the burden here is being put on students.
Mm-hmm.
So skip ahead, and I can fill in some blanks as needed. Skip ahead to, a few years down the line when we've been, looking at the data, looking at the implementation. We see three big problems with our implementation.
Okay.
And these are all very predictable problems based on the way it was set up and based on the fact that, few changes were being made to the program as we recognized the need for these changes. So skip ahead to, 3 or 4 years later, big problem, number one problem is having this be a graduation requirement.
Okay.
Right? This is a gen ed ePortfolio that
Mhm.
demonstrates competency in general education. Most of our students take these gen ed classes as freshmen and sophomores.
Right.
For us not to do something at that point, in the class, but wait till graduation or the semester before graduation
Yeah.
was really dumb.
Yeah. Too much of a latency period.
Right. And, the fact that, so this gets us to problem number 2, limited integration. Faculty weren't integrating like they should, I think we did a syllabus review and saw that, less than 30% even identify the competencies on their syllabus.
Oh dear. Okay.
And in some cases, when they put the competencies on, they have the wrong competency. Because we started out with 22, and in the first 3 years, we dropped that number to 8. So we're still seeing old competencies from that old 22. So,
Wow.
so we didn't put enough pressure on faculty. So number one thing to learn from us is don't ignore faculty in this process. Faculty have to be held accountable. We put all the accountability and all the burden on our students. And what that did was it upset students that, here I am getting ready to graduate. In some cases, I've got a 4.0. I've made A's in all of my classes. And what? I have to write a paper for, arts and humanities because I lost it when I was a freshman. So that was a big problem. So that's why we eliminated the graduation requirement. We didn't eliminate the need to collect artifacts. We didn't eliminate the need to assess general education. We just realized, rightly so, that doing it the semester before graduation is dumb.
Yeah, well, particularly if they don't have, any sort of checkpoints until then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. No benchmarks along the way equals out of sight, out of mind, and it's not giving us a very good assessment of general education if students have to recreate things.
Yeah. So if I understand this correctly, then, if a student constructs an e-portfolio and they wind up not having artifacts, or they have an insufficient reflection component, what have you, is it correct that they could not be approved for graduation until they corrected those?
That is absolutely correct.
Wow. Okay.
Right. You can see some potential problems.
Mm-hmm.
So problem number one was making it a graduation requirement with no benchmarks along the way. Problem number two is the lack of integration. If faculty aren't integrating, if they're not, taking responsibility, and a lot of people say, hey, this is too much work for the faculty. Well, my argument is if you're teaching a general education course, it is your responsibility to have, written learning outcomes that are related to the competency for that course.
Well, particularly if your course is, certified as fulfilling particular components of Gen Ed, I mean, it's pretty basic accountability.
Exactly. So when it comes to e-portfolio pedagogy, right, talk about, we didn't do a great job of, helping faculty. And by helping, I mean, having them come to workshops. We offered workshops, but there was no requirement. The other problem with Gen Ed is, these are often taught by adjuncts and lecturers.
Right.
Some of them get the syllabus the day before or the week before the class starts.
Yeah.
Right? So there's definitely that disconnect. So faculty support and faculty integration is problem two. So you really have to get your head wrapped around that and figure out how you're going to get faculty involved in this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because at our colleague institution, A&T, in our project we had several faculty involved there. We've had a very high attrition rate even for this study, which involves a stipend at the end, I might add.
Wow.
Because, these are individuals who are lecturers or adjuncts. The lowest teaching load that we've encountered is one participant has 5 courses this semester, the rest have 6 or 7 sections. And they just said flat out, we just can't do this. Because they were having to, if you're going to do e-portfolios correctly, you do have to kind of rethink some aspects of your pedagogy and, kind of gear your assignments to, how do they fit into the composite e-portfolio picture. And they just said, we have all we can do just trying to keep up with grading papers. And I think that's a really legitimate concern, to make it both meaningful and at the same time relatively easy for faculty to have buy-in.
Well, whenever you initially started the project and you said a lot of the faculty were adjuncts and lecturers, were there any specific ways that you tried to work with them or work around their schedule to keep them in the project?
Oh, yeah. So we've had, and let me just ask, if you don't mind, what incentive were you giving them? What were you paying them to participate, if you don't mind my asking?
No,
we were paying ours too.
No, that's fine. We were offering a $500 stipend at the conclusion of the project for a one-semester implementation.
Okay. So that's not a lot.
No.
So we have our best success with our summer assessment. So what we do is, and it's summer assessment slash faculty development. So what we do is bring in faculty every summer for 1 week. They work from Monday through Friday from 9 to 4, and they evaluate the, a stratified random sample of the artifacts in the students' portfolios. And so we pay them for that week. But in addition to working on that week and evaluating artifacts, they also know that, they're going to be tapped, and we don't abuse that, but we do want to work with them throughout the year to kind of have them talk to other faculty at their faculty meetings, have them develop, kind of teaching tools that we can share. So that's our number one success. And we try to get kind of a nice variety of faculty to participate. The first year we did it, and we've just done it now for the 6th year. So the first year was a pilot, and I was told, and this was my first summer here, they said, good luck getting anybody to participate.
Yeah.
Okay, well that sounds like a good challenge, so I think I can do that. So I invited 8 people, and our provost told me, get people to participate, but I only want tenure track faculty evaluating these portfolios.
Okay.
And the problem I had with that was, as we've already discussed, those are the people teaching the courses.
Yeah.
So, and the problem with getting the people that are teaching the courses is they're not really the opinion leaders. They're kind of the disenfranchised group that don't have much of a voice at the university. And I'm kind of generalizing. In some departments, they're highly supported and valued. In other departments, they're kind of told to keep quiet.
Sure.
So
And career-wise, there's that power issue involved where they can't really aggressively speak up on things because they only might have a toehold in university matters anyway.
That's exactly right, and they don't want to do anything to rock the boat and potentially lose that toehold. They're hanging on by their fingernails in some cases. So that first semester, that first summer, I brought in, usually I try to get about 25 people. That first year I brought in 8. And part of the 8 were the faculty that actually led the groups that wrote the competencies. Also faculty that were instrumental in developing the rubrics. Surprisingly, those were 2 different groups, which shows you another little problem that we had.
Yeah.
A mismatch between rubrics and actual competencies. And then I brought in faculty that are actually teaching the courses, and in most cases these are lecturers, but I felt that they really had to see the work that was being generated from these courses. So that was a really good model. The next year I did the same. Instead of 8 people, I doubled it. And, I had some of the same people come back because the other thing that we've learned is you have to do it more than once. You have to participate more than once just to really feel like you understand the process enough to contribute and to, make suggestions and to also improve your own practice. So this has been going on, as I said, for 6 years, and it's the most successful thing we do, and it's the number one way that we get faculty to buy into this process. And, I've got this past semester, we, in addition to scoring artifacts, we had everybody do a teaching presentation. And so the people that had done this for previous years, they talked about how they tweaked their courses and how they tweaked their assignments to meet the competency. What I think, if I were in your position, I would probably do something, and I don't know what they were doing for that $500, but at the end of that process, you're going to want to have some assignments that have been tweaked
Okay. Okay.
to support what it is you're doing. So you want to have some definite outcomes. So maybe you give them $500 to participate, and then maybe, another couple $100 at the, when they give you some actual outcome, some deliverable, that assignment, or some tweaking in some way of the course. And I've got a video that I can send you from one of our professors, and it's a brilliant video because he talks about, really how, I don't want to use the word difficult. I mean, I don't want to use the word easy because I don't think it's easy, but how not difficult it is. Just to make some minor tweaking to have something that works for the competency.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to share that with you because it's great. And it's great to hear it from a professor who has been engaged in the process for a number of years. And, talk about closing the loop. He's, revised his assignment. And just this week, I'm working on the summer assessment report because I write a report based on our data. And he teaches an STS course. And across the board, we're seeing scores just go up in STS from tweaking like that. So those are the kind of success stories that we really try to promote in the summer assessment to get buy-in. So that was a super, super long answer to your question.
Well,
I saw an answer in there somewhere.
Yeah. No, actually, that's very helpful. I mean, one of the things, of course, that really is a limiting factor, and I know the other campuses doing this project are facing a similar issue, is the fact that the study is just, this one-shot, one-semester implementation. And if you really want to understand how the whole ePortfolio process operates, some degree of longitudinal implementation is about the only thing that will give you meaningful, results.
Oh, absolutely.
If you don't mind me asking on my end a personal question about your, where did Clemson commit major startup funds for?
No.
Or
Oh my goodness.
because
we did this. Yeah, and I think sort of we're paying for that now. What Clemson did was they had an idea, and they hired me. And what I did, I came in and said, "Oh, sure, I can do this. What? 15,000 undergrads? No problem. We can make this work." What I thought I would do is give them a proof of concept, and then we would really put some startup funds behind it. And I think all of that thinking was probably naive from my part, albeit seemed logical at the time. But if you kind of think back to where we were in 2008, 2009, that's when kind of the biggest budget debacle hit.
Right.
And we were at Clemson, we were taking furloughs. So we weren't able to hire anybody. We were, literally doing a lot more with a lot less. So a couple years in, I was able to hire an assistant director, and we made a huge commitment to review every single artifact in every single ePortfolio. So you do the math, and you think, wow, you've got 15,000 undergraduates, you've got 22 competencies. That's a lot. And the way that we did that was we did a formative review, and this was not my idea. I think it's a really good idea, but I inherited it when I came to Clemson. And you've probably heard of our creative inquiry, which is our undergraduate research. So we put together 8 undergraduate research groups led by faculty in the discipline related to the competency, and these undergraduates were our first line of feedback in the ePortfolio process?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, that component probably has generated more discussion in our statewide Gen Ed Council than any other component of the model programs that were identified. And you can imagine the mix of responses to that. But
Oh, I've heard them.
yeah, I'm sure you have. But of course, that does raise this very practical question. And that is, if you are seriously going to be taking a look at all of the components in an e-portfolio, you have to have some way of just physically managing that, or else you'll never get through them.
Right, and I would argue, and it depends. It's so dependent on, again, what your purpose is. Our purpose was Gen Ed, and our goal, our charge, was to not burden faculty. So those kinds of things don't burden the faculty. Evaluate general education really don't work well together, right? So if faculty are kind of left out of the loop, then how are you going to ensure that students are doing it and are in fact putting good work in? I think a simple tweak to where we wouldn't have had to have every single artifact reviewed is if faculty would have taken more ownership of it and addressed it in their courses. And what we know based on working with our faculty and doing this for many years, that it doesn't take a lot. If you're teaching a Gen Ed course, as we said before, the job of your course, among other things, but part of the job of your course is to make sure your students develop a competency for the general education core competency that your course is addressing, right? There are other things probably that you will do, but at the very least, your student, if you're teaching a math course, they should leave knowing more math and being able to demonstrate that than before they came.
Oh, sure.
So we didn't do that. We said, you just teach the course the way you've always taught the course, and then we're going to go back and we're going to make sure that your students all put in an artifact, and that artifact was satisfactory. If we would have put more burden on the faculty to say, find an assignment, have your students do the assignment, have them identify, and I don't even think that you need to tell them what the assignment is. I do think some scaffolding needs to happen early on, where you help them develop the tools and the ability to recognize what good work looks like and explain why they think this is good work. I think that's an obligation of faculty. But, at the very least, maybe faculty do say, hey, put this math test in.
Yeah.
But that wasn't happening. So because none of that was happening, my office had to go in after the fact and make sure it was happening. So with one simple little tweak of putting some burden on the faculty, and it's not a huge burden, and I think it's part of what their job should be, teaching these courses anyway. I think you eliminate the need for that huge undertaking of looking at artifacts. The other problem that we had with faculty opting out of this process was most of the first-time artifacts, and by most, I mean most of the first artifact students put in failed. So now we're not only looking at, and we only have 8 competencies now, thank God. But we still have over 15,000 students, 8 competencies, and if we're looking at over 50% of them twice, now we've upped our numbers because faculty aren't engaged.
Yeah.
So I think faculty engagement is a huge piece of it, and there has to be some value in it. So what's the value for faculty? What is going to make your faculty want to do this? We're doing a research project right now on faculty engagement, and we are looking at faculty engagement in ePortfolio specifically, but we're looking at it kind of across the board. What we find is, a small percentage of faculty do it because it's the right thing. that's just
One would hope so.
agency.
Yeah, right.
Right? You know, I mean, they're going to do it because they're good teachers. You know, they're good colleagues, so they do it because it's the right thing. Some of our more engaged faculty recognize it's the right thing, but they also recognize that e-portfolio practice and e-portfolio pedagogy makes them better teachers. You know, so they
Sure.
want to know what their students know, and they want to see how their students communicate that information because that helps them teach.
Oh, sure, sure. And of course, then for that to be followed through with serious attention to quality of teaching in meaningful ways on the faculty evaluation and reward side.
Exactly.
You know, so,
Yeah.
so really, I mean, there are components of this that do kind of presume an integration of what e-portfolios are doing, even on the institutional level.
Correct.
hmm Now,
That's right.
I'm curious with the with backing off of the e-portfolios as a requirement for graduation, and it may be too early for you to anticipate the effects of this, but what kind of implications does that potentially seem to have for the use of e-portfolio pedagogy and its centrality at Clemson?
Well, a couple things need to happen. One is, as you know, this is a Gen Ed thing, so Gen Ed is a curricular issue. So the curriculum committee across the university, right, but particularly as led by the undergraduate curriculum committee, they have to decide what this is going to look like moving forward. And what has been proposed to them by me and the Associate Dean of Undergraduate Studies, the Dean of Undergraduate Studies, is exactly what I said before. We need to take most of this burden off of the students and put it back on faculty.
Mm-hmm.
Faculty that are teaching these courses need to take ownership of it. We need to, and we've already done this, so we know what the problems are, but, we need to apply some professional development to fix these problems. But, these courses that are not addressing the competency or that don't have, learning outcomes associated with the competency, we need to get them where they need to be. And we know exactly what courses these are. So we need to now put our focus on the faculty. And this has been presented to faculty, and faculty shockingly, and, so your question is good, because what does this mean going forward? Right now, faculty are saying, yes, this is great, this is a good idea. Mm-hmm. And we're saying, wow, this is literally going to be more work for you. But they think this is the way to do it.
Well, I mean, if it's treated as an investment rather than simply a cost in time, then
that's right.
Sure.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, administratively, there's a real challenge at UNCG with that, because one of the interesting casualties of budget cuts was with no consultation, no prior notice, undergraduate studies, the unit of undergraduate studies was basically demolished and kind of split up and farmed out. So and that actually was where my grant was housed. Now it's just sort of on its own. And so any sort of campus-wide implementation of things related to Gen Ed, related to any matters that are not within the province of one of the academic deans, I don't even know where those would be initiated anymore. And of course, that's an issue indigenous to each particular campus.
Yeah.
But it does raise this question about where is the champion of an e-portfolio initiative going to be?
Right.
Now, administratively, your office is under what? Is it undergraduate studies?
Undergraduate studies. Yeah. My boss is the Dean of Undergraduate Studies.
Yeah. Interesting, because I was actually, it appears, the last director of communication across the curriculum at UNCG. And I don't mean last as in most recent. I mean last as in
the end.
yeah, because along with undergraduate studies, that's where communication across the curriculum was housed. And the directorship was defunded, the staff position was defunded, and we have this vague set of empty requirements, and that's all that's left. And yeah, with no enforcement or monitoring.
Wow.
I think that there are certain kind of administrative assumptions that are made when you have an ePortfolio initiative, and you don't really see these talked about very much, but it does seem that it's fairly important to kind of figure out, where is sort of the where's the origin point and the home of the initiative, particularly as it matures.
Yeah, we've gone kind of back and forth with that too. I have always felt that my home should be in undergraduate studies, because I felt that this is about student learning, and it is about, curriculum. But I have been approached many times to move this shop to the assessment office.
Yeah, right.
And, that seems like a logical place for it to be. I resisted that because I didn't want ePortfolio to be about assessment. I wanted it to be, linked assessment and learning, assessment for learning rather than unlearning. So I resisted that. But that is a place that ePortfolio can be, and in a lot of places ePortfolio is under assessment.
Yeah. And of course, I think the big difference there, as you were mentioning, is assessment is all about outcomes and results, as opposed to the focus on like curricular integration and process that is more in your territory.
Right.
I've got another student appointment coming in just a moment here. Chantal, can you think of any other things that we might want to check with Gail on here? I mean, it's not like we can never contact you again, but
That's right.
but I thought it just might be more efficient to try to get everything as much as possible now, because I'm actually going to the General Administration tomorrow and bringing Chantal's notes from our conversation there to use as a resource.
And did you get our presentation, the one that we
Yeah,
gave to the General Counsel?
Yeah, I can access that because that's warehoused on our horrific kind of proto-Blackboard-ish thing that General Administration uses. It's not Blackboard, it's some weird Active Collab, I think, is the tool. But anything else?
Not anything that comes to knowledge right away.
If you don't mind, Gail, I'd really appreciate the opportunity to stay in contact with you as we go through our project, because since you've actually seen so much of this firsthand, I think it would be very useful to kind of have a more experienced set of eyes looking at some of the things that we're doing, and have you on our have you as the contact when we press the what is it, the Staples Easy button, right? Yeah.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to.
Well, terrific. And anything more you'd like to know about our project, I'll make sure that we send you some of the basic materials and all that to give you an idea in more detail about what we're doing.
Great, sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us, Gail. I really appreciate it.
Sure, I enjoyed it.
Okay.
All
And
right, have a good one.
thanks. You have a great day too.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.